DiBenedetto provides a more transparent update and says that the sponsor lied, and 2011 Racing could run a third car at some point in 2024. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We got a ton of paint schemes to take a look at, so let's take a look at those really quickly. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Todd Gilliland's 2024 Frontline Enterprise scheme that we'll see in 2 races in 2024. Very similar to last year's scheme, in my opinion. I thought it was solid. This one's pretty good, in my opinion. Looking forward to see it on the racetrack in 2024. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ryan Preece's 2024 Haas Automation scheme. This looks kind of similar to the Cole Custer scheme from 2021. It's alright in my opinion. Not fantastic, but solid. And we'll have some good runs with this scheme this year in 2024. The next main scheme we're taking a look at is Brad Keselowski's 2024 Kings Hawaiian scheme that we'll see in 9 races in 2024. This looks good in my opinion, very similar to last year's, but I like last year's a lot. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Michael McDowell's 2024 Bane Bone scheme that we will see for 2 races in 2024. I'm not a big fan of the color choice in my opinion on this car. It doesn't look absolutely amazing. I'm not a big fan of the color they use. It's not the best scheme I've seen overall. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Daniel Hemmer's 2024 Circle scheme that we'll see in many races throughout 2024. This one's a little more blue than normal. I do like this quite a bit. I'm glad the Circle will continue working with College Racing for quite a bit of the future. It's a solid paint scheme overall. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Cole Custer's 2024 Haas Automation scheme. This one is not good as last year's, in my opinion, that he had. I'm not as big fan of the color for Cole Custer, and it's kind of similar to Ryan Preece's. I'm just not the biggest fan of this scheme overall. It's okay, it's not great, but it's solid. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Daniel Suarez's 2024 Worldwide Express scheme. There's really no change to the scheme for this year, which I don't have no problem with that because this one actually looks really good. I like the light blue on it. I like the contrast of everything. It looks really solid and pretty good overall. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Chase Purdy's 2024 Bama Buggy scheme. Very similar to his other Bama Buzz schemes that he's had in the past. I think this one looks pretty good, though. I like it with the number 77 on it, and I think the colors of the red and the black work very solidly and pretty good overall, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Xfinity Series races at COTA and Atlanta in September, as they have title sponsors. Their title sponsor is going to be called Focus Health 250. Pretty cool to see it with Focus Health be stepping up to play and sponsoring both of those races. Sometimes we've seen this with other companies like Alsco sponsoring a ton of races in Xfinity in the past, but nonetheless, pretty awesome to see that Focus Health will be sponsoring the Xfinity Series race at COTA and Atlanta Motor Speedway. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Consumer Cell. As it was announced on Wednesday that Consumer Cell will sponsor Brad Keselowski in 2024 for, I believe, 4 races. Consumer Cell, I believe, is the first time they've sponsored NASCAR probably ever. So it's really cool to see that they are going to be joining the sport in 2024. It's great to have a new company around going into this year. Hopefully Brad Keselowski can run well with this paint scheme this season. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Focus Health. As it was announced today that Focus Health will sponsor Zane Smith for 20 races in 2024, starting at the Clash next weekend. Pretty exciting stuff. Focus Health, we don't really know much about this company. Obviously, we talk about the fact that they're going to be sponsoring the Xfinity Series races, a couple of those this year. But it's really cool that Zane Smith does have a pretty major sponsor for this year. Obviously, WeatherTech is going to sponsor in the Daytona 500. So I believe that's 21 races that have been confirmed. I believe Better Health will also be working with him this year as well, unless that Focus Health is replacing this. It's really good, though, to see that Focus Health will, in fact, be working with Zane Smith this year. I would imagine, though, that we'll see this a lot more, and what's really cool to see, they'll be working with this in 2024. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Hard Rock Bet. As Bob Pockers reported on Wednesday evening, the Hard Rock Bet has done a deal with Daytona for naming rights to its fan zone. Hard Rock has been involved with Daytona for the last couple of years, to my understanding, and now Hard Rock Bet will be coming into play to work with Daytona for the naming rights on the infield. It's pretty exciting stuff, and glad to see the Hard Rock Casino and other companies associated with Hard Rock are going to be working with Daytona for 2024. Pretty exciting and pretty awesome overall. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about electronic displays. As there's a new rule that came out for electronic displays on pit road. Remember, NASCAR for the pit boxes this season will be having new LED boards that are going to be available. And according to those rules, one of the big rules is that it must be approved by NASCAR, which isn't a surprise or a shock. Most times when you have new things that come into the sport and new things you want to bring into the sport, they have to unfortunately be approved by NASCAR. Even if we don't agree with them doing this, they have to be approved by NASCAR if you're going to want to see them on pit road. There's certain other rules that I can't remember exactly what was in the rules bulletin, but nonetheless, it's pretty cool to see that they've got a rule for this. I'm glad LED boards are going to be coming into play. We know Trackhouse is going to do some wild and crazy stuff with these LED boards this year, but I think it's pretty awesome and cool to see that they're going to have some new stuff coming in with those for 2024. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Daytona International Speedway. As Bob Pockets yesterday put out a tweet showing a map of the new area that is going to be repaved later after the Rolex 24. The biggest reason to repave in the backstretch is because of the Ryan Preece crash. But I will say this, I don't think the grass really had anything to do with Ryan Preece's car going up and over. I think a lot of it is due to there not being much underbody of the car. And basically because there's not a lot of things below that car there, the cars have a lot more tendency to flip over. I don't really think the grass had anything to do with it, unfortunately. That's my opinion on that, though. And again, they're planning to do something for that for next year's Rolex because, again, I understand why they're doing it, but I'm just not the biggest fan of repaving the backstretch when there really is no point, and it's kind of unnecessary that they're doing that, in my opinion. I'm not a big fan of it overall. I think it's a bad decision. I kind of understand why they're doing it, but I just think overall it is not a very good, and I'm not a big fan of this decision for them to do this. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Race Team Alliance. As it was reported by Adam Stern, I believe on Wednesday evening, that Race Team Alliance media arm has raised new funds for Racing America, a sign that the site could continue to exist when NASCAR's new media deal starts in 2025. Race America, remember last year, announced that they were going to be having a partnership with the Race Team Alliance, hopefully for more money to come into that program. Obviously, Racing America does host a lot of different types of events. They've done some grassroots racing over the years, and they've also, I think, done, and there's been rumors there could be some ARCA, some other events maybe going on that program in the not-so-distant future. More money coming in is great, and the fact that they're going to be sticking around more than likely with the upcoming TV deal that's going to be starting next year, I think is really phenomenal and incredible. Obviously, the RTA is working with them to try to make sure the Racing America stays around for a very, very long time. I think this is a positive change overall, and glad to see the Race Team Alliance will 100% be sticking around for 2024. Pretty happy about it, and glad to see that this will be continuing for 2024. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Tony Kanaan and Juan Montoya. As it was reported by Nathan Brown from the Indy Star that Tony Kanaan and Juan Montoya have been voted into the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Hall of Fame, and their induction is going to be May the 23rd. This is absolutely amazing and incredible to see, and both are well-deserving in getting into the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Hall of Fame. Juan Montoya, of course, a two-time winner of the Indianapolis 500 back in 2000 and 2015, and Tony Kanaan, who I think is almost ran the most Indianapolis 500s, and also winning the Indy 500 in 2013. Two of the best drivers in the history of IndyCar and open-wheel racing. Both of them are well-deserving of getting into the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Hall of Fame. Huge congratulations to both of them. I'm very happy for both individuals, and it's well-deserved to see that both of them are getting into the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Hall of Fame. It's well-deserved. Congratulations to both of them on getting inducted. They absolutely deserve it, in my opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Darlington, as their theme for Throwback Week has been officially revealed. And the theme that they're going to be using this year is grassroots. I think it's really cool that they're going to be doing something a little bit different. Obviously, I think the last couple of years they did the 50s theme, I think last year, which some drivers did follow that theme, but other drivers did not follow that theme. I think back in 2016 or 2017, they did 70s and 80s, and now they're going to be doing grassroots theme. Basically going back into basically the era for a lot of these drivers where they started. And I think there's going to be some really exciting and really cool paint schemes that are going to come out of it. obviously grassroots racing, like some of the late model scenes, probably see some of Denny Hamlin's old throwbacks as well. And I think it's just really cool that they are going to be doing a grassroots theme finally. I've been wanting to kind of see this because this is where a lot of drivers grew up and got a lot of their racing form. I think it's pretty awesome. Again, I love the fact that there is going to be a grassroots team this year in 2024 at Darlington. I think that some of these teams are going to be able to be extremely creative when it comes to the throwbacks that they do end up deciding to do. I think this is exciting, and glad to see that NASCAR will, in fact, be doing a grassroots team for the throwback race this year in 2024. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Glory to God Racing. As it was reported by Joseph Wrigley on TobyChristie.com that Glory to God Racing will not be entering the Truck Series opener at Daytona International Speedway. And according to a report, they will be entering races later this year, and the number that they are expected to use is number 47. Glory to God Racing's been under a lot of controversy for the last couple of years. Obviously, the owner of the team is kind of a little bit questionable, to say the least. And there's been a lot of bad things that have been, and shady things that have been around this organization over the course of the last couple of years. They originally were supposed to run 2 cars this year. They actually had revealed the numbers. I'm not going to get into all that situation that really ended up taking place. But GDG Racing, like I said, has been one of the more controversial organizations. Now, I do think that they are going to show up to the racetrack at some point throughout 2024, but I really wouldn't care less because, again, a lot of people don't trust this team. They're not the best organization in the world. They've done a lot of shady things. There's been a lot of shady practices when it comes to sponsorship and drivers that are supposed to run for the team that didn't get to run for the team. There's been a lot of bad things going on with this organization. As much as I don't want to see a team fail, I think a lot of people would probably love to see his team fail, especially with some of the things that they have done as an organization. Nonetheless, very interesting to say the least for sure, and not surprising to see that they are not going to be entering the Truck Series opener at Daytona. Not really shocking and not really surprising. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Charles Leclerc. As it was announced yesterday that Charles Leclerc has signed a contract extension with Ferrari. Terms were not officially disclosed for Charles Leclerc how long he will be for Ferrari going forward, but I would imagine it's probably at least a 2 to 3 year extension. So my best guess is this contract either goes for 2025 or 2026. Charles Leclerc, I don't think, has won a race in about a year or two now. His last one coming in 2022, I think, at Miami, if I'm not mistaken. But Charles Leclerc obviously has been with Ferrari for a very, very long time, really since 2018 to 2019. So he's been very, very loyal to him. I know some people have been kind of wondering if he would leave because of the issues with strategy, among other things, and not being able to perform as well. But I think Charles Leclerc, despite a lot of the issues that the team has had itself, I think he's been able to perform at a pretty solid ability. I think he is a good driver. He is World Championship eligible, and he could win a championship here if things go right. But the issue is right now you got Max Verstappen, who's pretty much winning every single race that's going on. So when you have a guy like Max Verstappen winning everything under the sun, it is going to be harder to win races. I know Ferrari only got one win this year, and that was with Carlos Sainz, and they could have won the Vegas GP had things gone right, and Leclerc had probably the best car in the first half of that event at Las Vegas. But still, I mean, it's good that Leclerc is going to be sticking around with Ferrari next year, and at least for the not-so-distant future. He deserves to be with the team. He's a good enough driver. He's capable, and overall, I'm glad to see that Charles Leclerc is going to be sticking with Ferrari, at least for the near future. As much as some say will disagree, would love to see him move on, I think it's a good decision to keep him at least with the organization for the near future. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Trayon Lovich. As it was announced yesterday that Trayon Lovich will be racing full-time in the Cars Tour in 2024, driving for Chad Bryant Racing. Trayon Lovich, for those who do not know, it was the most recent Canada Series champion for 2023. And there have been a lot of rumors and chatter circulating on where he was going to be headed for 2024. There have been a little chatter he could be going to Truck Series, maybe to Xfinity Series, but now he'll be full-time in the Cars Tour with one of the best organizations in Chad Bryant Racing. I think Trayon Lovich is going to have a really awesome chance and a really strong opportunity to compete for the championship this year. Yes, there's a lot of really great and awesome talent in the Cars Tour this year in 2024. But if there's anybody that's capable of getting it done this season, it is definitely Trayon. I would love to see him come to NASCAR once again and maybe come back and race in the Truck Series or the Xfinity Series. But you look at the Cars Tour. they've making a lot of really huge and incredible moves over the course of the last couple of months. They've hired Dale Jr., Kevin Harvick, Justin Marks, and Jeff Burton as the owners of the group. And obviously a lot of big name drivers are going over there. Hell, it was just most recently announced yesterday, I believe, that Tommy Joe Martins is actually going to be racing in the Cars Tour this year. So it's not really a big shock and surprise to see that a lot of people are making moves over to the Cars Tour. It is disappointing to see, though, that he won't be in NASCAR, but I love the fact he'll be racing in the Cars Tour this year. Hopefully he can run well enough and be extremely competitive in the Cars Tour this season. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Josh Bilicki. As it was announced yesterday, Josh Bilicki will once again be driving the number 92 car for DGM Racing at Talladega, and also a couple other races with Insurance King as the sponsor. Insurance King has been loyal to Josh Bilicki for the last couple of seasons. Obviously, it was announced about a week or two ago that he'd be driving the number 92 car for them at Daytona International Speedway, but it was not made clear how many other races that he would be driving behind the wheel. Again, the number of races not officially disclosed in the announcement yesterday, but I would imagine that he will most likely be in that seat for around 10 to 15 races, probably all the road course races this season, and probably all the super speedway races. He'll be behind the wheel of the number 92 car. I'm glad to see that Josh is still getting the opportunity to race in the sport. I think Josh is a solid driver. He's not an all-around amazing driver by any stretch of imagination, but he's a solid enough driver that can run well enough with the equipment if he's got the equipment right there. I've seen him have some solid performances with some underfunded teams, and that's why he's been able to stay in the sport for as long as possible. Nonetheless, congratulations on the opportunity to Josh Bilicki. I think he'll make the best of it, and I think it's well deserved to see that he'll be with DGM Racing this upcoming year. I'm really excited about it and glad to see that he'll be working with DGM Racing once again in 2024. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Joe Gibbs Racing. As there was an interesting little update in regards to their owner's point situation for the NASCAR Xfinity Series. So Steve D'Souza, who is the president of Joe Gibbs Racing's Xfinity Series team, he says that the 18, the 20, and the 81 cars will operate with the 2023 Xfinity Series points. Sheldon Creed will be behind that wheel of the number 18 car, Eric Almirola and John Ermachuk behind the wheel of the 20, and then of course the 81 car will be piloted by Chandler Smith. The 19 car will have no owner's points, but because of the fact that they did win a race last year with Ryan Truex in the 19 car, and a couple of the racers won in that 19 car, they will be using that number 19 car with no owner's points, but they will have the opportunity to do that. Now, what's going to be very interesting is they have not announced the schedule for basically the number 19 car who will be behind the wheel of that C. There were rumors that Joe Grapp Jr. may or may not be behind the wheel of the number 19 car at Daytona, but I wouldn't be surprised or shocked if you see Ryan Truex behind the wheel. Again, it's kind of unclear what the schedule is going to look like for the 19 car at this particular point. It doesn't surprise me that they're using the 18 to 20, 81 or getting the other points though, considering the fact that the 19 is more of a funded car at this point, while the 18, 20, 81 are all really going to be competing for the Owners' Championship this season. While at this point, the 19 car will not have any owner's points. They probably will by the end of the year. They've got good drivers going behind the wheel this year in 2024, even though that they're all paid drivers. Some of them are. They've still got good drivers like Ryan Truex and Taylor Gray and even William Sawalter at the end of the season. No disrespect to Joe Graff. I don't think he's the best driver in the world. I think he's a solid car, though, and we'll see what happens. But nonetheless, a very interesting update in regards to the owner's point situation over there when it comes to that seat. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Conor Jones. As it was reported by Joseph Strigley from TobyChristie.com that Conor Jones has 13 races planned as of now for 2024, of course in the number 66 truck for Thor Sport Racing. His first race will be at Atlanta Motor Speedway, and I think he'll run a couple other races later down the road. Now, Conor Jones did make a couple select starts in that number 66 car last year, and let's just be honest, he was not that impressive in the number 66 car. And Conor Jones, in my honest opinion, if you want the truth, is not the most talented guy out there. I get he's only 17 years old, but he's made a lot of bonehead and rookie mistakes out on the racetrack, in the truck series, and he struggled even in qualifying. Even Hailie Deegan outperformed him at times throughout 2024 in the race they ran. And that says a lot when Hailie Deegan's outperforming you. That's not the best thing in the world. Hopefully Conor Jones can show a lot of improvement throughout the 2024 NASCAR season. But I'm going to be realistic and honest with you guys. I really don't think he's going to show that much improvement and do a good job this season. Many of you might disagree, and that's perfectly fine and understandable, but I'm just right now not expecting Conor Jones to really set the world on fire with ThorSport this season. They've got a good core lineup over there at ThorSport Racing. I just don't think that Conor Jones really fits the mold of what they're looking for. I don't think he's going to do a good job. I think he's going to struggle with the team. And nonetheless, I just think that Conor Jones will not have a good year with ThorSport Racing this year in the 2024 NASCAR Truck Series season. I'm just not expecting much from him in 2024. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about LeBron James. Now, if you were on Twitter yesterday, you probably saw this very interesting interaction from LeBron James, commenting on all the designs that RFK was going to be revealing. Obviously, we've got one more design that will be revealed later here today. Probably by the time you're watching this, will be revealed. But LeBron James actually gave a shout-out to RFK Racing. A lot of people are kind of wondering, why would LeBron James be giving a shout-out to RFK Racing? Well, there's one big key reason. Technically, LeBron James is actually a co-owner of RFK Racing because LeBron James is part of the Fenway Sports Group. And he is a part owner of the Fenway Sports Group, which obviously the Fenway Group is a part owner of the RFK organization. It is really cool to see that LeBron is giving a shout out to RFK Racing, meaning that he does care about racing at least a little bit to an extent. He was at Bristol all the way back in 2005, nearly 20 years ago. And I think he's been to a couple other races from time to time. But the fact that we have LeBron James giving a shout out to the organization, I think is phenomenal and absolutely incredible. And I think it is pretty huge for the sport to see that LeBron could give a shout out like this, because someone like LeBron who has hundreds and millions of followers, if someone sees that, they're like, hey, LeBron is giving a shout out to RFK, maybe I can go support this organization and become a fan. Having LeBron interact, I think, is absolutely incredible. Maybe we're going to see LeBron at the racetrack a little more potentially down the road. I mean, LeBron is also getting near to his end of his career in the NBA, so maybe he'll transition away from that and focus more on being in NASCAR potentially, or focus on other ownership entities and other things going down the road. Nonetheless, I found it very interesting, and I found it pretty cool to see that LeBron James was giving a shout-out to RFK. I think it's pretty exciting and pretty awesome overall, in my opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Bubba Wallace. Now, Bubba Wallace was being interviewed by Bob Pockers during Media Days last week, and Bubba Wallace says that he is hoping the IMSA Mission Pilot Challenge race that will be happening by the time you're watching this video most likely will help on road courses for him in the Cup Series in 2024. He says that at the end of the year he was showing a lot of improvement, but he wanted to run the IMSA Mission Pilot Challenge race to get a lot more experience on road courses. This has been one of the biggest Achilles heels for Bubba Wallace's career up to this point, has been him on road courses. I think Bubba all around has gotten better on road courses over the last year or so. You look at, especially at the last couple, where he ran consistently in the top 15 a majority of the day at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He finished anything in the top 15 at Watkins Glen, but he should have finished in the top 10 because he ran top 10 all day long at the Glen. And then, of course, at the Roval, showed top 5 speed and nearly won the pole at the Charlotte Roval. I think Bubba has shown a lot of improvement, but I think the fact, and he's been the fastest car in the testing so far, most likely he's going to be the starting driver later today in the race, which wouldn't surprise or shock me because he's done a really solid job behind the wheel. In the race, he's been consistently the fastest guy in that number 23 car, the Smooch Racing organization car that he, John Remachek, and Cory Heim are piloting later today. I think it's really exciting to see that Bubba wants to get better on road courses, and I think it is good for the sport if Bubba can get better on road courses because he is a good enough driver to be capable of contending. He's a very talented guy, in my opinion, and he's shown a lot of improvement and maturity as a race car driver over the course of the last few years. I really hope Bubba can make the best of it in this seat, can do a good enough job to contend for the win later today. We'll see how that ages later this afternoon, but I think him going and running more road course races is going to help him out in a pretty huge, in a pretty big, massive way. Overall, I think this is a great decision for him to do this, and I'm excited to see that he'll get the opportunity to run some more road course races maybe. And maybe we'll see him run some more IMSA races down the road as well to get better on road courses there. And maybe this will help him contend for victories like it helped Tyler Reddick when he ran some of those GT races with Richard Childress Racing. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about NASCAR Full Speed, as the first trailer was officially revealed on Wednesday morning. Remember, NASCAR Full Speed, which will be the Netflix documentary, will be released on January 30th. So this upcoming Tuesday, it will be released. When I looked at the trailer, I thought, man, this looks absolutely phenomenal and incredible. Not only are we going to get to see the focus on the track with the drivers, but also off the track. The many featured drivers will be in this are going to be Kyle Larson, Bubba Wallace, Ross Chastain, Tyler Reddick, I think a couple other guys like Ryan Blaney, and I think Joe Logano will also be featured as one of the drivers there. And I think Chase Elliott maybe a little bit will be featured throughout it. And they're going to show some really cool and incredible footage as well throughout it. I am very excited about this. It'll be a 5-episode series, 45 minutes each. I think that this Netflix documentary, if it goes very, very well, I think this could have a lot of really huge good things, because we saw Today's Show basically showing the trailer for this on the Today's Show, which a lot of people do watch that still to this day, even though it's lost a lot of ratings over the years. A lot of people still tune into the Today's Show, and I believe had Ryan Blaney and Bubba Wallace on the Today's Show as well. So you think about this overall, when it comes to NASCAR Full Speed, I think that this could have a lot of massive repercussions down the road, or a lot of really good things down the road for the future of the sport. I love it they're bringing this in. The trailer looks really great, by the way, and I'm excited. And trust me, hopefully there's nothing big that goes on Tuesday, January 30th, because I sure as hell am not going to be doing anything on the 30th, because I'll be watching that all day, all 5 episodes, and tuning into it. I'm excited for it. It looks phenomenal. It looks incredible, and I'm definitely looking forward to the first episodes that are going to be officially released. I am very excited about it and looking forward to the first season. Hopefully we'll have a couple seasons of it down the road, but I'm excited to see the documentaries coming out. Hopefully it can bring some new fans in, especially in that key 18 to 49 demographic. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story in today's episode, as we're talking about Trevor Bane. As it was announced yesterday late afternoon that Trevor Bane will be joining Legacy Motor Club as a competition advisor. He'll be joining as the fitness guy, helping out with the fitness regimen and a couple other things, and will also be an assistant to Matt Kenseth throughout 2024. This is absolutely a massive and a big hiring. Trevor Bane mostly just recently raced this past year in 2023 in the NASCAR Xfinity Series for Gibbs Racing in the number 19 car for 3 races, and also did make a one-off start with Rackable Racing at Homestead Miami Speedway in the number 25 truck when it was announced a few weeks prior that Matt DiBenedetto would not be back behind the wheel. This is a pretty big hiring, and it's kind of interesting hiring when you think about it, because you look at Legacy Motor Club. They've been hiring a lot of people as of recently. They hired Matt Kenseth last offseason. Cal Wells is currently the CEO. And now you've got Trevor Bane, who is now, to me, sounds like he's probably going to be a former driver unless he does get back behind the wheel at some point, maybe with Legacy Motor Club, which with the 84 being available, I wouldn't be surprised if he does get back behind the wheel. But I think this is a pretty huge and massive hiring for Legacy Motor Club to bring in Trevor Bane to kind of help out Eric Jones and John Hunter Nemechek. Trevor's been there. He's been in the motorsport for many, many years. And it's kind of, to me, what it sounds like the position he's going to be in is going to be kind of similar to what Josh Wise does with Chevrolet's camp, helping with the fitness routine. He helped a lot with the Chip Ganassi drivers back in the day, helping with their fitness routine. I still think Josh Wise does that currently at the moment. And now you've got Toyota's system where Legacy, of course, is looking to get their drivers really, really good, and they're wanting to be very, very competitive right off from the get-go. I think this is a massive and huge hire for Legacy Motor Club. I think this will have a massive and a huge impact for a very, very long time and for many, many years to come. And I'm glad to see the Legacy Motor Club has basically signed Trevor Bane to work with them. Again, they've been making a lot of massive, and they've probably had a more productive offseason than any other organization. I think bringing Trevor Bane in to work with them this year, I think is a phenomenal hiring. And congratulations to Trevor Bane on getting the opportunity and the chance to work with this team for the 2024 NASCAR season. Really excited and looking forward to it overall, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Martin Truex Jr. Now, earlier this past week, Martin Truex Jr. was doing interviews with Fox Sports during production days, and Bob Pockers had begun to ask the questions about retirement once again with Martin Truex Jr., because this has been a question with Martin Truex Jr. that we've been wondering for the last couple of years. Martin Truex Jr. said, really? We're starting this again? And then he basically said he may not find out about retirement for me, if I'm going to retire or not, until September. This is now getting later and later for Mark Truex Jr. to make the decision, because remember, in 2022, he did not announce that he would be returning in 2023 till late June. Then last year, for the return of 2024, he made the decision in early August. Now it sounds like Mark Truex Jr. is waiting a little bit longer this upcoming season to make a decision if he is going to retire or not. Look, Mark Truex Jr., one of the biggest reasons he came back for this season is because of how well he ran in the regular season in 2023. He had, I think, 12 top 10 finishes in 16 race span and won all 3 of his races in a 16 race span. Unfortunately, the end of the year did not go very well for, I believe he failed to score a single top 5 finish, and only scored 2 or 3 top 10s, I believe, in the last 11 races, and unfortunately got shockingly eliminated in the round of 8. He was someone a lot of people thought was going to win the championship this past year. I thought he may get eliminated in the round of 12, but was luckily able to salvage way through the round of 12 with 1 or 2 good performances, but he really struggled in the playoffs. And I think how I feel about Mark Truex Jr. is this. I think Mark Truex Jr. is going to have some struggles this year in 2024, despite what David Wilson said that he expects all 4 Joe Gibbs Racing drivers to make the postseason. I don't think that's going to happen for Mark Truex Jr. I think he's going to have a lot of distractions. There's probably going to be a lot of questions when it comes to retirement throughout the year. And the fact it's getting later and later in the year for him to make the decision tells you that this year most likely will be his final year in the NASCAR Cup Series. If he does retire at the end of the year, who replaces him? Well, my prediction is John Hunter Nemechek. I think John Hunter will move away from Legacy Motor Club over to the number 19 or the number 18 car if they decide to bring that back in 2025. And most likely I would then give that to Chandler Smith, who will probably take a seat in the number 42 seat. I think that John Hunter is going to take over. I think that it's been kind of long-term that John Hunter goes over to Joe Gibbs Racing. I know Legacy does that and does really not align with Joe Gibbs Racing this season at all. They're kind of their own thing. But I think that Toyota is going to want to move John Hunter over to Joe Gibbs Racing for 2025 if Mark Truex Jr. does, in fact, finally end up retiring, which, again, I think the chance of him retiring at the end of the year are very, very likely. He's the most likely driver of any driver to retire at this point. He's technically one of the two oldest full-time Cup Series drivers now. He's 44 years old, and it will be 44 in June. He's getting older at this point. His performance is probably not going to get any better. I think that this upcoming season will be Mark Truex Jr.'s final season in the NASCAR Cup Series. I think it's going to be his last year, and I think he will retire, in fact, at the end of the 2024 NASCAR Cup Series season. I think John Hunter Nemechek more than likely is going to take his place and take that seat. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about horsepower once again. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of talk about horsepower for the short tracks and road course racing. Why has there been a lot of talk about it? Well, the racing product at short tracks and road courses has been very, very bad over the course of the last 2 years. There was a little bit of improvement near the end of the year in 2023, but generally on short tracks and road courses, the racing was not very good. Now, there's been a lot of people that have been saying that we need to raise the horsepower to make the racing at least a little bit better. Well, there was a new article that came out from The Athletic, and Adam Stern had quoted this tweet from him, and basically David Wilson says, we like to see better racing at short tracks, and if the consensus is to add horsepower, then we're on board. That now confirms 3 engine builders who have now stated publicly that they are okay if NASCAR was to add horsepower to short tracks. And I believe they absolutely need to add at least a little bit of horsepower to make the racing a little bit better. Because the more horsepower you have, the more throttle response you're going to have with these next-gen cars. Again, Goodyear has done their part to go ahead and at least add a little bit of better tires. And we saw better racing, in my opinion, with the tires and the rubber being laid down. You need to have more horsepower in the car for better throttle response and more driver control. Because when you have less horsepower in the car, it's less in the driver's hands. If you give these guys a little more horsepower, you're going to put a little more back in the driver's hands. And I think the racing product itself will get at least substantially better. And I think the fans will be happy. Look, Martinsville the last couple of years, I've always loved Martinsville. The last couple of years, though, the racing has not been amazing at the track because of the package. Same thing goes for tracks like Bristol. Same thing goes for some of the other road courses and short tracks used to put on great racing. Watkins Glen had its worst race I think I've ever seen in the 15 or 16 years, or the near 20 years I've been a fan of this sport. It was a bad race last year. William Byron dominating the race just was not that good overall. So to me, I think giving these guys a little more horsepower to make the racing better would be the right decision. It's now up to NASCAR at this point to make that decision on that. But I think now with the fact that we've got all three of the big engine builders, ECR Engines, Bob Fisher, basically Doug Gates and Roush Yates Engines now saying it too, that they could increase horsepower. They need to do it. I think they'll start by going up to 750, maybe shutting the fans up a little bit. And then if it does show improvement, maybe NASCAR could start going higher and higher and higher. I would love to get to the days where we have 900 horsepower engines again, because that's what we're technically using at this point, is 900 horsepower engines currently. I would love to see NASCAR get back up to that. I don't know if we're ever going to get back up to 900 horsepower, but if we can at least increase the horsepower to make the racing a little bit better, because 670, in my opinion, is not enough, especially for short tracks. I think then you'll have a much better racing product in NASCAR if you can at least increase the horsepower. So I really hope NASCAR does listen to the engine builders, because it's not just the engine builders saying this, it's the team saying this, it's the drivers saying this, it's the fans wanting this. It's now up to NASCAR to make that decision when it comes to increasing horsepower. I really hope NASCAR does listen to the fans and they pay attention, but at this point I'm not sure if they're going to listen. We'll see what happens going forward down the road in regards to that, if NASCAR does listen and they do decide to go ahead and increase it. But as of right now, I'm not sure if they're going to go ahead and increase that said horsepower for the 2024 and maybe in the near future as well. I think at this point, let's just go ahead and test it and see if it works. And now we're going to jump on to the next story in today's episode, as we're talking about Cory Heim. As it was announced yesterday that Cory Heim has signed with Legacy Motor Club and 2311 Racing as the official reserve drivers. And on top of this as well, Cory Heim will be the official simulator driver for Legacy Motor Club in 2024. Cory Heim is one of the higher drivers on Toyota's pipeline and TRD's pipeline. Obviously, will be, of course, full-time with Tricon Garage in the Truck Series this year in 2024. We'll be getting the opportunity in the lifetime to be a reserve driver of two of the big three organizations. I talked about this on the channel yesterday. Not something that I expected, but I think this is a massive and a huge deal. We're going to be talking about 2311 Racing here down the road. We obviously know the 2311 Racing long-term, they do want to have a third full-time entry in the NASCAR Cup Series. And now having Cory Heim as a reserve driver, I think is going to help in a major, major way. If a driver does get injured, which hopefully that doesn't happen, if a driver in the Cup Series gets injured for one of these two organizations, that being Bubba Wallace, Tyler Reddick, John Nemechek and Eric Jones, or even Jimmy Johnson has some sort of injury, something come up, Cory Heim will be that driver who will come in and replace. But I also think there's a really good chance and possibility of him being a reserve driver now, there's a really good chance and possibility that Cory Heim could at some point, in fact, make his NASCAR Cup Series debut at some point this season. Considering the fact now that he's going to be working with both these teams, they might run a third car at some point. And you got him, and talking about Cory Heim, you've got him working now with, of course, Kurt Busch, who'll be able to give a lot of advice to Cory Heim inside the shop and simulator. He'll also get to work with Michael Jordan being the GOAT of basketball, in my opinion, getting the chance to work with him. And then, of course, you get to work with Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick and get to work with a couple other teams and get a lot of help. He's going to have a very busy year. He's going to be running the Michelin Pilot Challenge race here not too far down the road later today. I think this is a massive pickup for them. And again, I think Cory is someone who's really high on the prospects for Toyota. I think he's probably the #1 prospect that remains in the lower series right now. And I do believe that he is going to have a really good chance to make his Cup Series debut in 2024. And let's say Legacy Motor Club or 2311 Racing does, in fact, find a way to get a charter this year. I think there's a really great chance and possibility that he will make it be full-time in Cup, either 2025 or 2026. I think it's not too far down the road. We're getting close to that future currently at the moment of him getting the chance and opportunity to run full-time in the sport. He's a good enough driver. He's very capable. I'm excited to see Cory Heim get the chance and opportunity to work with both these organizations and teams for the 2024 season. Again, I think he's going to make the most of it. I think he's going to do a really good job working for them, and I think he'll help a lot in the simulator work, and maybe Cory Heim can bring a little bit of stuff from the simulator to basically help out both Tyler Reddick and Bubba Wallace throughout the year and help the organization grow and develop as a whole. I'm excited about this. I'm really looking forward to seeing him get to work with both these organizations for the 2024 calendar year. It is really exciting. It's pretty fun, and I'm glad to see that he'll get to work as a reserve driver for 2311 Racing and Legacy Motor Club for the 2024 season. This is a pretty big and massive pickup for these teams going into the 2024 season. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we're talking about 23XI Racing. Now, I talked about this on the channel earlier in the week, I believe back on Wednesday, but 23XI Racing is looking to potentially run a third car at some point in 2024. Most likely, the number 67 car that they ran in a couple races in 2023. David Wilson was interviewed by multiple reporters, including Steven Turano, and shout out to Austin Kanensky from Motorsports Wire, who put out this article in regards to this. But it sounds like the number 67 car is going to run at some point in 2024. Like I just mentioned a second ago, the number 67 car did run in a couple select NASCAR Cup Series races in 2023. Travis Strana drove the 67 car in the Daytona 500. Now, that car will not run in the Daytona 500 this year. Unfortunately, it's one of the teams that has confirmed they're not going to be running at this point. But we saw that car run the 500 last year. And, of course, we did see the 67 car run at the Indy Road Course with Kamui Kobayashi. Now, the big question is, if the 67 car is to make a return and they decide to run this third car, who will be the said driver who could drive behind the wheel of this car? Well, I look at potentially, at first, maybe some of the drivers in Toyota's pipeline. Maybe going and getting someone, it won't be Kurt Busch, obviously, but maybe going to get Eric Almirola to make a select start or two in the 67 car, considering he's with Joe Gibbs Racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series this year. Maybe he gets an opportunity to drive the seat. What about, like, Cory Heim, like I mentioned? We know he's going to be a reserve driver. Maybe he gets to start with the team this year. What about maybe getting Sheldon Creed or Chandler Smith? They're both part of Joe Gibbs Racing this season in Xfinity, so why not him? And maybe they get Carl Edwards out of retirement, since considering Denny has promised Carl maybe a one-off start in the future. Maybe they get Carl out of retirement. But most likely, if I had to guess, they're going to get someone from the international scene first to get the chance and opportunity to drive behind the wheel. I would most likely guess maybe someone like a Kamui Kobayashi again, or someone part of the World Endurance Championship Toyota side, like I think Brendan Hartley. Nick DeVries is part of that group. But a lot of people are pointing to Lewis Hamilton. And I think there's a lot of facts that could be brought up when it comes to Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton and Denny Hamlin were actually spotted talking to each other in the paddock at the Las Vegas Grand Prix a little over 2 months ago when that race ended up taking place. And Denny Hamlin spoke to Lewis Hamilton. And some people thought maybe Denny Hamlin was going to give Lewis Hamilton the chance and an opportunity to race in NASCAR. Lewis Hamilton has had interest in the past and maybe wanted to run in the Daytona 500 or a couple other races in the past. But the biggest issue for Lewis Hamilton to run in NASCAR is a lot of times Formula One is going on during the NASCAR season as well, and there's not a lot of open available time. The only race that he could probably run, honestly, is either race during the summer break or would have to be during the Daytona 500. And it would be a very, very stressful race. Like I've already mentioned that they're not going to be running Daytona, but there are some opening slots because F1's schedule is getting longer and longer, it seems like, and those opportunities are dwindling very quickly. But also think about it as well, Lewis Hamilton's getting close to the end of his F1 career. He's going to be 39 at the end of this year, and I don't think Lewis Hamilton is going to be around much longer in Formula One, considering his age. A lot of drivers don't go past that 40 to 41 year range unless they're Fernando Alonso or a couple other drivers, because a lot of the younger talent is coming into play. I would love to see some other drivers, though, like a Fernando Alonso get a chance and opportunity, and maybe someone like a Valentino Rossi get a shot. But if you want my early prediction, I think it is going to, in fact, end up being Lewis Hamilton who gets to drive behind the wheel of this seat. Will this car run this year? Yes, I think he'll run the 6-7 car at some point. I think that this car eventually will be a chartered entry for Cory Heim. That's my early prediction right now. But I think going into the year, I think you're going to see the 6-7 car run at some point in the 2024 year. And my early prediction currently at the moment is going to have to be Lewis Hamilton. I think Lewis, there's just a lot of correlation right now with Lewis being the potential guy to drive behind the wheel of the seat. I think you will see this car show up. I think Lewis Hamilton will be that said driver behind the wheel of this car in 2024. I could be wrong. Maybe, like I said, Carl Edwards comes out of retirement out of nowhere and returns. That would be really awesome and cool for closure. But right now, I expect Lewis Hamilton to be the said driver behind the wheel of this seat in 2024. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Matt DiBenedetto once again. There's a lot more drama revolving around Matt DiBenedetto over the course of the last couple months. Let's continue to follow the saga that started back in late December. Remember, on December 27th, a couple days after Christmas, Matt DiBenedetto tweeted the pen emoji, saying that he had something signed for 2024. Then Private Porno basically said that they thought he'd be going to AM Racing. But then Bob Pockers basically said, no, that's not true. He's not going to AIM Racing for 2024. Then a couple weeks ago, there was an article that came out from motorsports.com indicating maybe Matt DiBenedetto was maybe going to go to Kaulig Racing. But then last week, or about a week ago, Matt DiBenedetto basically said that a sponsor deal had fallen through and he could not have that sponsor for 2024, so they had to pull the plug on that sponsor, meaning that he would not at this point be running in 2024 and would let things play out. But then earlier in the week, and actually kind of talked about this as well, Matt DiBenedetto basically says that the sponsor that they were actually going to be going with lied and did not pay up the money. To my understanding, is what ended up happening is that the sponsor lied. That is a very, very big thing. Now, one thing to note is that Matt DiBenedetto did not reveal what company it was. I think at least a little bit out of respect. Now, Matt DiBenedetto, obviously, we all do know that he's had a little bit of a history of PR issues. We go back to what happened a few years ago at the Wood Brothers back in 2021, where he thought he'd be back with the Wood Brothers in 2022. He made that 11-minute video, and then Roger Penske kind of clowned on him on Sirius XM, saying that Matt was only promised through 2021 for him to build up his stock for 2022, though I did think the Wood Brothers made the wrong decision to get rid of him for 2022, considering the fact that Harrison Burton the last couple of years has completely struggled and is on the hot seat for this year in 2024. Then he went to Rackley, had that whole Let's Go Brandon situation. Then he went to Rackley Racing for 2022, got a win with them at Talladega. Then he announced it halfway through the year they'd be leaving in 2023. Then they let him go a few races early. We all thought he had something signed for 2024. And then it just all kind of crashed down at this point. Look, in my personal opinion, when it comes to Matt DiBenedetto, I think he's made some mistakes. No doubt about that. But I also do believe that Matt DiBenedetto should be racing in NASCAR this year. He is a capable enough driver to be racing in at least for sure in a decent Cup Series ride. Is he like a Kyle Larson or Kyle Busch level talent? No, absolutely not. I would put him on the same level as Bubba Wallace, which Bubba Wallace is a pretty damn good driver. And I think Matt DiBenedetto is about as good as Bubba Wallace is currently at the moment and is capable to race. But again, he's had a lot of the social and PR issues. But again, like I said, he should be racing. He's not the only driver that's not signed right now, in my understanding. Brett Moffitt's not signed either, and he's another guy who's had issues with sponsorship, and he's about the same age. And I think Brett Moffitt's a little bit of a better driver than Matt DiBenedetto. Not 5 times like someone had mentioned, but I think he's definitely a better driver than Matt DiBenedetto, considering he's a champion. But kind of similar to Matt DiBenedetto, he's having a hard time finding sponsorship and funding for this season. Again, do I think Matt DiBenedetto will race at some point in 2024? Probably. I think he'll get an opportunity with a team at some point this year. I think someone will find him a ride. But unfortunately, with it being so close to the end of the season, being only 9 days away from the Clash, and only about 3 weeks away from the Xfinity Series opener, and 3 weeks away from the Truck Series opener, we're getting really close to the end of this offseason now, and all the rides that have been announced have been picked up, or a lot of rides that haven't announced anybody yet at this point have already announced and confirmed their drivers for this season. So unfortunately, at this point, as much as I think it'd be cool to see Matt DiBenedetto drive for a team like Spire, work with like SVG or a couple other people, unfortunately, he just doesn't have a ride currently at the moment. And again, I saw a lot of people saying that it was always Matt DiBenedetto always blames everybody, and sometimes he does that. But if a sponsor truly did lie, that is a bad look for them. And he's not going to reveal, obviously, what that said sponsor was, out of at least a little bit of respect, even though he kind of called them out a little bit, which is like, okay, Matt, you didn't have to say the sponsor lied. You could have kept it there saying the sponsor deal fell through. And you didn't have to say the sponsor lied, because that sponsor could come back and call you out and go on social media and call you out for saying, oh, Matt DiBenedetto was the one the deal fell through. It seems like there's always something with him, unfortunately. I hope Matt DiBenedetto does get the race this year in 2024. But if he doesn't get the race, it's definitely unfortunate. He's a good enough driver to be racing this season. He's better than a lot of drivers in this series. I look at certain names that are behind the wheel that shouldn't be behind the wheel of these cars, and he should get the chance and opportunity. But as of right now, Matt DiBenedetto does not have a seat for the season, and he's still working on something for 2024, but he has a lot of other ventures and deals that he does have currently at the moment that he's focusing on. That is what he said. So, that is going to today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Links description below that, and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. What do you think about Matt DiBenedetto's most recent comments? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about 2311 Racing? Do you think they'll run a third car this year or not? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I don't think there's any more videos dropping on the channel today. Tomorrow on the channel, there is going to be 1 or 2 videos dropping before the Rolex 24 happens. And then on Sunday, of course, we will have the race review for the Rolex 24 dropping. And I most likely Monday, if there's not enough news to cover, I will probably have a video on all the silly season moves that have happened up to this point, as the Clash will be starting this week. I got a lot of great content dropping on the channel that I cannot wait for you guys to check out. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.